Good evening, Rick, and thank you so much for coming to do this.
Well, I'm very happy to be here. This was great fun looking at all of these images.
Excellent.
People submitted things that covered pretty much the entire gamut of things that I had hoped for, and a few things that I hadn't even thought about.
That's the impression I got. I've heard rumors of a few of the things that were coming into the competition, but I haven't. I looked at them yesterday long enough to move them into a file, but I didn't open them. I need to get my spectacles. What we're going to do, by the way, guys, here is Rick has already been through these with a fine tooth comb. I've just had a gander at them a while ago. Rick's the judge. I'm just here to irritate him while he judges and look at the pictures and enjoy them. So I think what you said was, Rick, we're going to start at a very good but not quite the winning end of the spectrum, and then head up towards the victor. Is that
right? Right. I thought we'd just sort of do a countdown to the greatest hits.
I think we should then, and we're going to talk about all of them, right? All the entries.
Yeah, that's what I'm set up to do.
Then I am all ears. It is over to you. Why don't you take the screen, and I'm ready.
Yes. And you should be looking at a blank Stereo Photomaker Pro screen.
That is exactly what I'm looking at.
And so I will start with ones that didn't come out exactly as hoped. Now, this is a picture that I had great hopes for until I fused it up in stereo. And the problem is that although there are two images, they are identical.
Oh dear.
As you can see from the fact that I'm sitting here clicking the swap sides button in the Stereo Photomaker, and although the title is changing, aside from a slight blinking of the image from time to time, nothing changes. So yeah, this is laid up as a stereo pair, but it's totally flat.
Well, this is something I have certainly done before. A bit embarrassing.
You know, I think every one of us who has ever made stereo stuff has made that mistake so many times. It's just like, oh, another one of those.
Has anybody who does stereo stuff ever broken both of the ear things off the viewers at the same time?
Oh, well, see, I traditionally remove the ear things from my viewers.
Yes, well, of course, that's what I was doing.
Because that way I just hold them up to my eyes and I can easily drop them. And because I normally wear glasses, as do you, I think, it just works out best for me to not have earpieces on the viewers.
Well, that's good. I'm glad they broke off then. These appear to be identical. Yes, okay. Well,
yeah,
you
comes up nice.
You can't really win with that, can you?
You cannot. As much as I appreciate the beauty of the image, as a stereo pair, this one kind of doesn't qualify. I have another pair that has exactly the same problem.
Oh, this was another one that I had high hopes for when I saw it.
Exactly, and it has exactly the same difficulty. So one of the things that I do when trying to help people get stereo stuff right is have them beat on the swap sides button, because one of the, well, obviously if you swap sides and nothing happens, it's not a stereo pair. The ideal situation is where you swap sides and each of the images appears to rotate back and forth a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, then you've got what is very likely a good stereo pair, and then the only question is it crossed or is it parallel? And that's something that can take some more experience to figure out.
Well, unfortunately, both of these entries were from Mihai. So clearly, I'll get in touch with him and make sure that he understands what is going on. I think this may just be a technical thing. It's unfortunate because they're great pictures.
Yeah, they're lovely pictures. Lovely pictures. Okay, and so then moving up the list, we have another image that I had the very highest of hopes for.
I know whose pair of images this is. This is lovely. This is Angie?
Well, it is and it isn't. There is a reason it's being presented early in the sequence. And that reason is that as a stereo pair, this one has some significant difficulties. Um, it's not immediately apparent, but there are big issues with vertical disparity at various places in this image. And the effect of it is that things sort of lock up locally as stereo,
Hmm.
but you cannot shift your view around and keep an overall clean stereo impression of it. And the reason for that is that this subject, the whole shooting match, is rotated about 25 degrees from what it would need to be a clean stereo pair. Um, I believe you and I were looking at another stereo, a synthetic stereo that it had been generated some nights ago, in which one of the images was shifted in Y and the other one was shifted in X as it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it has very much the same character. That particular thing that was done with the synthetic stereo ended up rotating around an axis that was about 30 degrees off from where it needed to be. This one's about 25 degrees. I don't know how this pair was generated, so I cannot say exactly how the error occurred. It could be a matter that the camera was rotated when the pair was shot. It could be that the images were rotated for compositional purposes before the stereo pair was laid up. That's a common mistake to think, is that if you've got a good stereo pair, that you can simply rotate the images and still have a good stereo pair, and you can't. Um,
Well, that's a
s-
shame. That's a shame because I love this picture. It's a gorgeous picture.
y-
Um,
y- yes, this picture had every potential, because it's a beautiful picture in mono to start with. Very nice colors and composition, and it's a complicated geometric shape, which is difficult to figure out from the mono view.
yep.
And I had great hopes that when I locked it up in stereo, that suddenly it would be crystal clear, and it wasn't. And I was initially puzzled about that. Um, but then I've learned through painful experience over many years that when I have that, gee, this looks odd experience, that I should check for vertical disparities and misalignments.
Well, I
And
didn't.
I
Sorry,
and I did that, and found that some of them were pretty extreme.
I did not check back with you as I should have done after you made that comment about the picture I sent you, which was the same problem as this, as you say. You were absolutely right. I had put the number in the Y box, exactly like you said, which was, yeah, I can't believe I did that, but I did.
Well, they're just one pair of boxes is right over the other pair of boxes. All you need is a moment's distraction, a little twitch of the mouse, you get it in the wrong field,
Boy.
and some significant amount of time later, you get a result that looks odd.
But you were
And
able to make it look good or
I
better.
was, I was, I was by diagnosing the problem and rotating the images around and reframing them and getting them to where they needed to be. And I played around with that approach with this image as well, this pair. Let me see if I can get that loaded in. Looks like this one's going to actually load. Yeah, so
Okay.
this is not perfect stereo yet, but it is much better. The whole thing will globally lock up. Um, I can I can easily see what goes with what. I can freely zoom in, and it remains conveniently viewable everywhere. Uh, this would this one had a lot of potential. It's just this one technical flaw, unfortunately, is a pretty big one,
Okay.
and a good lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot rotate your stereo pairs for composition after they've been shot or rendered. In Zareen Stacker, one of the things that it is possible to do with synthetic stereo is figure out how you want to rotate the images for compositional purposes and incorporate that into the X and Y shifts so that in the end you end up with clean stereo. It's not a trivial computation. I've done it for myself, but I've never tried to walk anybody else through the process.
I will definitely give that a try. I hate that this didn't fly. I'd love to see it redone without the rotation.
Yes, like I say, I wasn't able to get this perfect, and I don't know why that is. One of the things that I tried to do that failed was to get it close like it is here, and then have Stereo Photomaker do its auto adjust to tweak things up. Because Stereo Photomaker is pretty good at finding matching points in the two pairs and figuring out what combination of shift and rotate and scale and skew and keystone it needs in order to make things match up perfectly. But when I fed it this pair and asked it to do that operation, it botched it and ended up producing a pair that was far worse than what we see here.
Is there does Photomaker let you swap sides?
Yes. So in Stereo Photomaker, again, you can swap sides. And here you see the effect that I was describing that each of these images appears to be rotating around a vertical axis. Rotating around a vertical axis is what you want because that's the axis that runs down between your two eyes. Um, if we loaded in the original, okay, here's the original pair. If I swap sides on this, it it seems to be rotating, but it's rotating around an axis that's like coming down from upper left to lower right.
Yeah, skewed.
And yeah, and that's another indication that yeah, something's off in the rotations.
Oh boy, it looks particularly strange when it's the wrong way around with the glasses.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure it I'm sure it does.
Oh, dearie me, I wasn't ready for that.
Yeah, I should not have stopped at the wrong place there when I was pushing the button.
Well, nice try, Angie. I hope you had another entry this time. I better check that was Angie's. It really has to be. I don't know anybody takes pictures of flowers like that.
Yeah, I have no clue about almost all of these. There was, I think, one that had a name in the names of the files, and there was another one that had a name embedded in the trailer of a movie or something like that.
This is when I go back and sync everything up so that I know who to talk to. So
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know these people anyway, and um, and it wouldn't affect my judgments. As you well know, I can be equally persnickety with everybody.
yes, indeed, I'll testify to that, Your Honor.
And equally complimentary. I don't care where a good image comes from. If it's a good image, it's a good image.
There you go. Agreed. All right.
Okay, so this was very interesting. This is cross eye. Let me put it parallel. If you want to use your glasses on it. So this is a really nice, uh, a very clever idea, and a very nice treatment of the beetle at the bottom. The reason that I have it presented fairly early in this sequence is actually because of the title up at the top, and not the title. The title is Jaws 3D Beetle Mania in 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 flat. The title itself is not 3D; it's flat, and the difficulty is the swimmer.
Mm-hmm.
The swimmer in front of the title has vertical disparity with respect to the title behind it. And so it's impossible to cleanly fuse both the title and the swimmer. And so it just looks wrong.
Yeah, this is one that it looks wrong to me, but I don't know why until you point out that the swimmer's in front of The script.
Well, the swimmer being in front of the script would be fine, but there's also the swimmer sort of looks odd. It's like it doesn't lock up firmly. It's like there are two of them ghosted a little bit, and let me show you why that is. I'm just going to zoom in here. Now notice at the top of the screen that on the right hand side here, the
Hmm.
swimmer's hand is right at the top of the frame.
Hmm.
But on the left hand side, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a vertical shift of the swimmer. And again, look at the lower foot, how close it is to the E underneath it over here, but it's much farther away over there.
Yes.
Those vertical disparities will always prevent proper fusion. They always indicate that there's a flaw in the stereo, and the only question is, how big is it? Is it big enough to matter? In this particular case, it the the flashing appearance of the swimmer as my eyes struggled to fuse up all the stuff in its vicinity immediately attracted my attention as being, oh, that's a problem. And then fortunately I was then able to shift my eyes down and pay attention to the beetle down here, and the beetle is gorgeous.
Hmm.
That just, yeah, that's beautiful. And again, such a clever concept, swapping in
Yeah.
some sort of a predatory beetle in place of the jaws.
Yeah. That is really impressive. Popping out the screen 3D.
Yes, yes. Let me just blow that up again so that
I wonder what that is. Is that a Passalis of some kind?
the bottom of this pair is great. The top of the pair is a buzzkill. You know, if assuming this is layered up in Photoshop, this is a 1 minute problem to fix.
Yep.
Just just bring that swimmer back down so that the disparity is zero. So it's the same vertical position in both images. Moving on, we have something described as a pistol cross. So there we are.
Okay.
And this is nicely exposed. It's a very interesting geometric structure. The reason it's still being presented fairly early in the sequence is because it has a bunch of stereo artifacts that look like they might have been caused by retouching of some sort. Um, if you look here, where my cursor is,
Hmm.
there's a kind of a funny horizontal band across that. Let me sort of zoom in on that area.
Yep. I see it.
And there's something just doesn't fuse up correctly there. I have not attempted to figure out exactly what has gone wrong, but it looks like maybe there was some retouching that was done on one side that was not done the same way on the other side. If you you take off your glasses as you were just a moment ago, and now look at each pair individually, see this collection of white spines on the
Hmm.
surface here,
Yeah.
and
No.
there's no matching collection over there. Um, I expect if we go and look at other places where there are similar effects, we'll see something the same. There's an area in here that looks very odd in stereo. It almost looks like it's depressed and it's non-matching between the two views.
Hmm.
And again, that's a case where there's a bunch of stuff over here, like these bright spots right in my cursor, that are not present over there. So I think there was probably some erroneous retouching going on in this one.
Yeah. Or it could have been, I guess, Photoshop after the fact or something.
Yes, yes, which I count as retouching.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, yeah, when I say retouching, that just means doing something with a mouse and a brush, independent of the automatic algorithms. Frequently, that's done inside Zurian Stacker or Helicon or whatever stacking program you're using. But we've also seen people do a lot of successful retouching in Photoshop afterward. Um, a, a very successful way of fixing haze. I think I've watched Bud Parrott do that.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can also get rid of things like dust by using the healing brush
Yes.
independently in the left and right panels in Photoshop, and the results end up matching just fine for stereo purposes. But in this particular case, that didn't work here. So we ended up with stuff that does not match in stereo. It's an inconsistency, and again, that's a buzzkill.
That was Gerald H's Amaryllis pistol, and good photograph, Gerald. I'm sorry the retouching didn't fly. I could have warned you of that. I, I get told off for retouching all the time. Don't worry about it. You're in good company.
I suspect that Alan is referring to the many conversations that he and I have had, which can be briefly summarized as, Alan, please don't do that again.
Yeah, yeah. You think you're going to get away with it, but you never do. You never do. All right.
Moving on, we have this caterpillar.
This is another picture I really liked.
Yeah, which appears to have been shot uh, as a true stereo. It's not a synthetic stereo, and the primary issues I have with this one are that first off, the stereo is quite mild. It just doesn't have much depth. It would have benefited from a lot more separation between the two views. This is mainly becomes apparent to me when I lock it up in stereo with the glasses, and then I take away the glasses and look at it in mono. And if my perception is, gee, the stereo didn't add much, then I start suspecting that, yeah, there just wasn't enough separation. And that's the case I'm getting here.
Yeah, it does look like it's coming out of the picture at us in the 2D image, but in 3D it looks kind of flat.
It does.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it's all behind the monitor surface, which is fine. That's just kind of the glass display box effect. But yeah, it looks much flatter in the stereo, ironically, than it does in the mono.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. It's a shame. It's another one that looked like it was going to be a cracker from the stills. From the
Yeah, I would be curious to know exactly how this was shot. Often caterpillars that are in this posture are moving a little bit, so the cha-cha technique does not work very well. And but it could be that this one was holding still well enough to use cha-cha technique, or it could be that somebody used a side-by-side pair of cameras.
I shall tell you, the,
Yes.
the Windy Bestiole is the title, and the first set was the parallel view. Entry description: analog handheld stereo pair of a smallish caterpillar at 1.9 times magnification with a 60 millimeter autofocus micro Nikkor plus 12 and 13, the PK12, PK13 rings on a D7200. Two lucky frames almost in focus on a 15 plus series, and the wind helping for the parallax. The field, the field of view,
Lovely.
field of view rotated a bit in the wind, so I had to cheat a little with GIMP to realign the thing. Hope it's decent, not really sure. Worked on it by crossing my eyes.
Under the circumstances, I will characterize this as really, really successful.
Excellent. That was Skelmorin. I hope I'm pronouncing that word correctly.
Yeah.
You know the thing
Man, when the wind gives you two images that are rotated enough to make even an acceptable stereo pair, that is wonderful luck. And then whatever manipulations they had to do afterward to make it line up properly as a stereo pair, those were done almost perfectly. I did check for and find a little bit of vertical disparity, but not enough to really bother me in this one. Just enough to let me know that, yeah, for sure, this is not synthetic.
That's the main cue to you that you're looking at an analog pair, is that there's no vertical shift,
Uh,
or there is some vertical shift. I mean,
if there is vertical shift, then the odds are very, very good that it is analog, true stereo, as opposed to synthetic. And the reason for that is that using the synthetic stereo capability in Serene Stacker, the only way to get vertical disparities is to put something in the Y shift fields. Otherwise, you'll never get that. And so, if you see any, immediately you suspect, oh, this was shot as either two separate stacks or two separate images or something.
mhm.
Uh, always leaving open the possibility that somebody put something in the Y field. You
Yeah,
know,
that
it's
would never happen, I don't think.
you are not the first person to have made that mistake. Um, Let me assure you, there is a reason that I'm pretty good at spotting all of these difficulties. The reason is because I've made most of them multiple times.
Sure. I
So I have the greatest of respect for everybody who shot any of these things.
Me too. Me too. That, especially knowing who would be judging it, that's pretty impressive. I thought we got quite a few entries too.
We did about 25 of them as I counted. I may be off by a little bit, and there's some ambiguity in how I count, but yeah, 25 ish.
All right. Next up is,
Plum Blossoms.
oh, lovely. Yeah, I remember this one too.
So this one I I had a lot of fun with. Fun of the form, oh, let's zoom in and see what I can see. And there's a lot of interesting structure here with the stamens and the pistil. Um, there are some areas that I would have expected to be sharp that are not, and around the edges of some of these structures, I see what looks like a falling away of the structure, kind of a sweeping back of texture from the pistil um,
Oh,
back to the petal.
Helicon sign.
Yes, but it also happens in Serene Stacker if you do DMAP.
Yeah, it's averaging the values and creating a smooth progression.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's in Helicon they specifically generate a 3D model with a smooth surface. In Serene Stacker, the an intermediate stage of the DMAP processing is to produce a smoothed depth map. And when you construct a stereo pair from a smoothed depth map, you'll get again this very similar effect. It's why stereo from DMAP is not the right thing to use if you have complex geometric structures like fiber mats or transparent wings or anything like that that you want to represent accurately in the stereo. One of the classic trade-offs, DMAP does a better job with the colors and contrasts and noise, but it's not as good with the geometric structure. So you got to decide. For me, stereo is all about the 3D structure. Um, Anything that screws up the 3D structure is a buzzkill. And so I generally find myself generating my stereo images with Bmax and accepting whatever image degradations I get from that, the usual increased noise, muted colors, yada yada. And so what I frequently do is if I have something that is very nice from a fine art standpoint, colors, contrast, general appearance, but I also want to show off interesting structure, is I'll present it twice. Once as a stereo pair generated a PMAX for the structure, and again, uh, primarily from DMAP with maybe some retouching to get the colors, contrasts, all that stuff.
Do you think this would have been a successful picture had it just been a PMax?
I don't know. My ability to predict exactly what's going to happen with these is not as high as I might hope and other people might think. So very often I'm just reduced to, okay, I'm going to try it and see what it looks like. And then trust, of course, that my judgment about what I think it looks like uh, matches up well enough with other people's judgments that it's useful.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's a pretty picture. This was Larry's, by the way, Larry Strunk, the man who taught me how to use Fusion 360 in the last 2 weeks.
Okay, well, it's not a shame. This is a successful. It's just an opportunity for improvement and learning as well.
Good. Okay. It is nice. I like the textures, and I particularly like the lighting on the top petal up in the top right. That is beautiful.
Now, in my world, the only complete failures are ones where things didn't work and I cannot figure out why.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as I can learn from the experience, it was a good one.
Here, here.
So next we have a milkweed blossom, and I will need to click sides to get that shown in proper depth for people with glasses.
Oh, it's a little on the dark side, isn't it?
It is a little bit on the dark side. Part of that is because I'm displaying it in Stereo Photo Maker and the image is in ProPhoto RGB, and I don't think Stereo Photo Maker understands about ProPhoto.
Okay. That's
But
nice.
even when this is pulled into Photoshop or to Zarine Stacker with its all of its options set to honor color profiles, this is still very muted and muddy in colors. And I don't understand why that is, but just from an aesthetic standpoint, that's an issue for me because I don't think that any milkweeds actually look like this. The other thing that is odd about this is that it's presented in horizontal layout with the flowers sticking off to the left. Um,
It is unusual.
yeah, in my experience, milkweeds usually grow pointed upward. And in any case, if this flower were oriented with the flower upright, then it would be a vertical pair, which, from a stereo presentation standpoint, uses screen space more effectively.
Fair enough.
That's another thing I often do is when I present an image two ways, I will often present it in landscape format as a mono image, but change it over to portrait format for the stereo presentation, just to get better use of screen space.
Yeah. They're somehow easier to look at too when they're like that, I find.
Yeah. On the bright side, um, this image is essentially without defect for the stereo aspects. I mean, we can zoom in as far as we want with this thing.
Wow.
Isn't that gorgeous?
That is fantastic.
Beautiful presentation of the structure of the milkweed blossom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, look at that little. Somebody's been nibbling on the tip of that petal.
That is, you can see the translucency of it down inside. That is beautiful. That water droplet is perfect.
Yep, yep. This
Very,
is when
very.
I find myself zooming in and panning around and saying, "Ooh, look at that! Look at that!" Uh, that's when I start thinking to myself, "Okay, this is a really good example of how stereo works." And from all of those standpoints, this is really nice.
Did you take off points, or do you take off points for the little bit of halo that's left around the little cup things?
A lot of that is unavoidable. You mean like right here?
Yeah, lots of detail
Yeah,
stuff.
that's very difficult to totally get rid of. So, um,
You don't
I'm
notice
just
it in
I'm
stereo.
just aware of it, and but in terms of like scoring for this competition, no, there'd be no points associated with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm amazed every time I look at a stereo pair where the individual images have significant faults, yet when they fuse up, they just disappear to me. I mean, I know you still see them, but I think my brain will fill in all those gaps very efficiently.
Well, I may attend to them more, but everybody's brain, including mine, is very good at uh, pulling out the information that is consistent between the two views and paying attention to that, and disregarding the information that is not consistent between the two views. There
Pattern.
were really there were really good evolutionary reasons for why the visual system works that way, and it's because your two eyes are getting inconsistent information a lot of the time. Anytime you're near an edge, one eye sees around the edge, the other eye does not see around the edge. You don't want your head agonizing over that and building up its cyclopean view of the world. You just want it to say, "Oh, there's an edge."
Right.
And so that's what our brains are partly wired and partly trained to do.
Good.
Attend to the consistent stuff.
Yeah. Makes sense of the world. That was Amy Five, by the way. Amy is one of our moderators, and I think she's entered every competition since the beginning.
Wow. Well, let me say I have not entered any of your competitions, and that is partly out of laziness and partly out of fear. Uh,
Well,
your competitions attract a lot of good stuff,
they do.
and and as we've discussed before, most of what I do for my own work is not to make beautiful pictures; it's to understand things better.
Yes.
And so, where beauty counts, I have learned that it's to my advantage to find something else to do.
Well, I've been telling people that the to win this competition this month, it had to be all about function, structure, and function. If it was beautiful, bonus. But whatever the picture is, it's got to show something that we couldn't otherwise see. So what's up next?
An image of a flying beetle. Okay, I believe this is already in its parallel form. I think I have seen hints of beetles mounted in this way before from other people. Um, but yeah, this is very interesting. It's a clean stereo
Huh?
in the sense that there's no artifacts that are attracting my attention as being problematic. Uh, and we can zoom in on it,
Yeah.
and interesting structure appears. But at this point, I've kind of reached the limit of the interesting structure. At this point, things are sort of getting fuzzy,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some evidence of focus banding. It seems like along the elytra, there's a sharp section and then some dull stuff and then some more sharp stuff. Um, so I don't know exactly what was done to impede the sharpness of this, but there's a whole lot more pixels in this image than there seems to be information.
Interesting. Yeah, it does kind of lose some some definition as you zoom in. Definitely.
And by the way, while I'm here, so you notice that the this bright spot on the wing,
Mm-hmm.
how it's kind of smeared to the right on this side,
Yes.
and over here it's not smeared to the right. It might be smeared to the left a little bit.
Uh-huh.
That's a typical artifact from synthetic stereo with bright stuff in a dark surround, and it's very difficult to totally fix it. Sometimes you can fix it by retouching, but then you risk screwing up the retouching, which is a huge problem. And so generally when I see that sort of thing, I just say, "Oh, okay, strong indication of synthetic stereo. That's an artifact I know about. I'll just ignore that."
Were you bothered by the pin being left in, or was that immaterial to you?
Oh, there's a pin. I guess it was immaterial to me. I didn't notice until you
Oh, okay,
mentioned it.
there you go.
Yes, I see there is a pin with a tiny bit of glue. Somebody did a very good gluing job with this.
Yeah, Primitive Dan did this, and certainly doesn't look very primitive to me. I love the colors. It looks like a very small beetle, Dan. I don't know what kind this is, but it looks like it's most of the way there to me. Most of the
Yes,
successful. I do love the contrasting colors of the elytra spread out like that. That's a clever composition. I haven't tried one from below like that. I like it. So we're actually looking up into the elytra, right? On the right, at least.
correct.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, we've got this is dorsal side of the elytra, and then this is all ventral.
Yeah, and that's its ears then.
So you say. I haven't actually found that same bit of the literature.
It's in there somewhere. Oh no,
Um,
it's not. It's in a different one. It's in a different one.
you can send me the references on that at your
I
convenience.
will. I will. All right, Primitive Dan. Good job.
Nice
Nice work.
work. What do we have next? We have
Oh yeah, Star Wars guy.
Star Wars, and this was very interesting. Um, my first thought when I saw this image is that it was a stereo pair generated entirely by CGI. That was just the first thing that crossed my mind was that this thing looked so CGI-ish.
Really?
And yep. But then when I zoomed in, uh, of course, I see this could be CGI, but if it is CGI, they've gone to a lot of trouble to model dust and bent tabs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the conclusion is this is a physical model, a very shiny physical model, and the reflections are not totally consistent between the two sides, which tells me that it's true stereo. It's not synthetic in any way. Uh, Um, and it's essentially without defect, except for the inconsistent reflections, which are totally physical. That's one of the inconsistencies I mentioned that we're used to dealing with in daily life. Um, but where we're here and we can't move our heads around to observe that the reflections move and see how things are going to establish more view of what's consistent and what's not. For me, those inconsistent reflections make it just a little bit uncomfortable to work with.
Okay. It's interesting. I would not have picked up on that. That is Fool on the Hill, and Fool on the Hill has done some stuff with toys and models in the past, and this is nice. It's pretty striking.
It is. It's a lovely piece of work.
Good job,
It
Robert. Very nice. I wonder what's that in its feet. Who knows?
whereabouts.
Well, they appear to be pipe cleaners coming out of its feet. It might be to stand him up. There, those things at the bottom.
Tabs. That is
Oh, yeah.
apparently a tab that is not in its slot.
Maybe,
It
maybe,
looks to me like there's a slot in the piece behind it that the tab is not stuck through.
which is all fine so long as it's on both pictures.
Oh yeah, that's how I can tell that what it is. I've got that tab locked up very nicely in 3D.
Well, Robert is calling these things ats.
Yes, that was the Star Wars term for this particular type of weaponry.
Oh, there you go. At. See,
When Star Wars was shot the first time, these sorts of things were all done with claymation. They made physical models and stepped them through frame by frame by frame.
yeah,
I've seen a lovely documentary on uh, the making of Star Wars, and it's fantastic to watch those people. You know, a head and torso pops up through a a, a, a port in a landscape, and
yeah.
this gigantic thing reaches out and slightly rearranges the models, and then disappears again, and they take another picture.
Oh yeah, it's
And,
wild. It's
and of
well,
course, they had to plan that all out beforehand to know exactly where to put those things.
oh
And
yeah,
so the guys are out there with their micrometers, putting everything in proper position. I don't have the planning skills to even think about doing anything.
never.
All right.
All right, Robert, good job. What's up next?
Well, next we have an animated GIF. There it goes.
Yep,
This is unfortunately for you, crossed eye. I'm lark happy with it. Um, and
I can.
it's only presented in one format, and I can't change it. So let me just replay that. So what we have is a stereo fly's head being rendered from front to back. So it's like a ghost materializing into something solid in front of our eyes.
Yeah, that's not. That's nice. That's unique.
It is unique. I've not seen this trick done before, and it's very clever. And so this falls into that category I mentioned of things that I didn't even think about.
Is that transparency on the left eye that we're seeing?
Yeah, I'm along the left side of it. I'm not sure quite what's going on there. There is some transparency elsewhere, but that left eye, I'm just not quite sure what's going on with that. It's a case where I would have to say, "Can I get all the source images for that?" And
Yeah.
then go figure it out. You know what I do to you, and you send me gigabytes of stuff.
Yep. That's the only way to figure these out. I'm not sure if this is Leroy's or if this is Bill's. I will figure that out. I should know that. Was this one? Did you pull this off Discord, Rick, or was this one that?
No, it's in the collection of files that you
Okay,
made available to me on what was it,
right.
Google Drive this time.
Yeah, so that was the one I pulled. That was one that was submitted and not. It was rejected by the bot, and I put it in last night. So that's the correct one.
Okay,
Was Bill Wheeler? That's his second one. Okay.
okay. Now we are seeing as well some limitations of the GIF format here. It does the animation okay, but you can see distinct color banding, contouring in the
Yes.
background.
In the background. Yeah.
Yeah, because GIF only does 256 distinct colors, and anything beyond that, it has to get by dithering,
Yeah.
and it's not always the best at dithering either.
So it kind of posterizes it.
It does posterize it. Okay, what else have we got?
That was Bill's. Very nice. This is Amy's second one. I remember
Okay,
seeing this one.
yes. So this is very clean.
Very clean.
Um, Try this as being synthetic stereo, in part because the background is flat. The out of focus stuff
Hmm.
behind the thorax, those two legs, are completely flat, and that happens because, of course, the program has no depth information back there.
Right.
Everything is only in one frame. Um, and this one also is very pleasing in the amount of detail that appears when we zoom into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We can just keep going in and in and in. Now we do notice up in this region um, that the image is starting to break up into layers. So there's a layer here, and there's a layer edge there, and a layer edge, and another layer edge. It kind of looks like like the critter has a bunch of fine ridges in its in the structure of its surface, but it doesn't.
So that is what you would call separation of the layers?
Yeah, I would call that layer separation. I think in the stereo community they sometimes call it cardboarding
Oh,
because it looks like your subject is painted on layers of cardboard.
okay.
And this is um, it's really unavoidable that if you zoom in sufficiently far, you're going to see some of that stuff in synthetic stereo. Um, until we reach the point of having programs that are smart enough to look at the collection of imagery and build a truly accurate 3D model of the subject. When we get to that point, which I hope we will, but I don't know whether it's going to be 5 or 10 or 20 years. Um, until we get to that point, if you zoom in far enough with any sort of a structure like this that is really simple in real life, then you're likely to get that sort of artificial ridges or knobbles or something like that.
Yeah, I saw that in several of my green beetles. You you can increase the number of steps and smooth some of that out, right?
Absolutely. But of course, the trade off then is how far do you have to increase the number of steps to totally get rid of the effect? How much do you care? In
Exactly.
this particular case, the effect does not appear until I get zoomed in to about it's I can see it only with a struggle, specifically looking for it there. If I zoom in this far, it calls itself to my attention.
Well, that's 100% right there.
But
So
that's zoomed in a long ways.
do
So
do you count off for stereo that for artifacts like separation if you have to
yes,
go above
but
100
it's
to get
but
to
it's a it's a graded system. Some amount of separation is likely to occur, and the question is, how far do I have to zoom in before I see it, and how well can I tell that it is an artifact as opposed to physical structure of the subject?
got it?
Again, I'm very sensitive to the concept that the purpose of stereo is to let me understand the subject. So if the stereo has a problem that I can recognize as being an artifact of the stereo generation, then I can discount that. But if the geometry is misrepresented in a way that I cannot recognize, that's a problem.
Got it. Well, that's still a pretty picture.
It is very nice. This is one of the ones that I can spend a lot of time zooming in on and just playing around, enjoying the tour through the anatomy.
Yep, that's the fun of it. What number was this one, Rick? Do
Oh,
you dare to
I
ask?
didn't actually keep track of the numbers. We're about halfway through the sequence.
Okay, so that's about 12th.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, good. I'm just trying to calculate when I should start getting excited. Usually around 7 is when I get excited. What's up
You
next?
if the sooner you start getting excited, the longer you can stay excited.
No, no.
Just I'm just saying.
I get excitement fatigue quite quickly, you see. I don't want you to get to number 3 and for me to be yawning.
Already blown out by 3. Okay, we'll try to
Alright,
avoid that. So where are we next? We are at this guy, and I think this is the parallel layout. Yeah.
this is
So,
Patrick's.
well, this is fun. Um,
Nice.
it's it's sort of whimsical, and the stereo um, is high quality.
Wow.
It's not totally free of artifact. There's some transparent foreground, like here in the antenna, but as you pointed out, your eye tends to slip over that unless you're specifically looking for it. You just say, okay, well, maybe it looks a little weird, but yeah, there's an antenna there. And oh, look, if I let my eyes drift back, I can see that there's also hair on the thorax behind it. Your
Yeah,
eyes are very good, and your brain are very good at shifting attention. Okay, I'm going to pay attention to the antenna, which is black with orange and some white spots. or I can let my eyes separate a little bit, let them drift back to those hairs on the thorax, and can track individual hairs
Like,
as they pass completely behind the antenna.
so that's a nice job, Patrick. Do you take points off for the fact that this is a dead subject that's dirty? Would you, I mean, is that something that it doesn't bother you, does it? As long as you can see the interesting anatomy.
It bothers me a little bit from an aesthetic standpoint. I like stuff that looks clean and looks like it, has not had a really bad hair day. On the other hand, this is presented as a critter that's had a rough day,
True, true.
and it certainly bears all of the visual evidence of that.
It's had a rough day. It's an Asian mud dauber.
An Asian mud dauber. I
Yep.
would never have guessed.
It's from
Does
the
he does he say what the thing is that it's sitting on?
no. It's a purple flower. That's
It's a purple flower. It
that's as
is,
good as
and
it.
it is a very detailed purple flower.
Yeah, it is. What are those globules? The liquid drops? Are they just nectar or something? Or are they not
I
globules? They're probably
I
not.
have no idea. You're talking about these little bright
Yep.
things in
Mhm.
kind of below the surface?
Yes. I've never seen a flower like that.
Beats me. I can only guess that those were at some point liquid that dried. Totally a guess.
Well, Patrick will know. Good job, Patrick.
Very interesting
Mm.
structure again, one of the ones that I can just poke around here
I
for
suspect
a long time.
if you spend your entire adult life daubing in mud, that you would have a pretty dirty coat. So maybe that's acceptable for a mud dauber. What is
Well,
what is that
uh,
cleft in its palp or mandible? That's
uh,
very strange.
it is a palp, and I do not know what that cleft is.
It's
I
in,
have seen similar clefts in antennae under scanning electron microscope that were clearly identified by the person shooting the picture as, gee, this is really interesting. I have no idea what this is.
yep, same
Um,
thing.
yeah, right. We can see it, but we can see that not only is it a cleft, but it's a cleft with little hairs in it.
Mhm.
But we cannot tell what function it performs.
Almost certainly sensory, you'd think, of some kind.
I totally agree about that. But as for why that function is performed better with tiny hairs in a cleft, as opposed to a cleft with no hairs or hairs on a smooth surface, I have no idea.
It's all about duration of approximation, having the pheromone or whatever it is held out of the breeze long enough for the hairs to recognize the chemical structure. It's like having a petri dish to put your sample in. That's nice. I like that. That's a very unusual picture. I like
It
the
is.
colors too. That they work together in a very garish kind of bordello way, but I like it.
Right, and I'll mention in contrast to this specimen appearing again, this one has a very pleasant amount of 3D separation for me. I get a good feeling of depth, like when I zoom in. I feel like I'm really getting physically closer to a subject that has
Yeah, I do too.
the 3D shape I would expect to see for a subject that looks like this in a camera view. So
Mm.
this is a question of how much separation do you use in the stereo view? In synthetic stereo, you have your choice after the fact of going anywhere from zero separation, a flat view, up through a little bit of depth, more depth, a lot of depth, too much depth, can't even diffuse it at all. Um, Usually, I like stuff that's around 6 to 8%. And excuse me, 6 to 8 degrees. I tried to get that right, but I failed. 6 to 8 degrees, and then whatever that turns out to be for percent, because that depends on how deep the stack is.
Right.
Um,
Now, that's when you say 6 to 8%, you mean four. I mean 4 degrees on each side of midnight, right? Is it?
yeah, I said 6 to 8 degrees, and that means total separation between the left view and the right view. So 3 to 4 degrees off axis for each
That's
eye.
that's what I use as my benchmark. Is four 4 degrees for each eye, so it comes out to 8. Okay, all right, and that will determine, based on the depth of how many images there are, how deep the shot is, that will determine what the actual separation is as a percentage.
Correct.
Got it. Well, it's very nice. I've not seen an Asian mud dauber before in such clarity. Good job, Patrick.
So then next up, we have these seeds.
Is that what they are?
And yes, these are labeled in the title as swan plant seed. Swan plant seeds, plural. And I have not looked up to see what a swan plant is. I have no idea. Uh, I'm solely judging what I see in front of me. And what I particularly like about this pair is that when I put on the glasses, I get a very clear understanding of the shape of the seeds and how they are arranged with respect to each other.
Oh,
And when I take away the glasses, all of that understanding disappears beyond the level of this one is in front,
uh-huh.
this one is behind it, and it like must be laying on its back, and it's got some sort of a
Right.
ridge around the edge of it, but I can't really tell what's going on. And all this stuff back here, I have no idea what the physical shape of that is until I put the glasses back on. And oh, yeah, okay, I got it. So that's a marker to me that the stereo is really successful, is when I see something clearly and intuitively in the fused up stereo view that totally disappears when I lose the stereo.
I'm not seeing it disappear as much. I mean, what is it about the background that doesn't make sense? Or what is it about the shape of the things that you're seeing that I'm not? They look like
That
coffee
that
beans.
may be that may be difficult to put into words, but let me try it this way. When you put on the glasses, you see clearly what the 3D shape is. You see that there's a seed that here that extends from kind of the center of the picture into the back of the picture.
Right.
There's another seed here which is far in the back and
What is
is uh, lined up left to right.
that?
There's another seed here going from foreground to background, um, foreground where the cursor is now, farther back that way.
Uh-huh.
Okay, when we take the glasses off in an individual view, of course, everything that you see is consistent with what I just described. It has to be, it's a view of the same scene.
Right.
However, there are a lot of other scenes that would also be consistent with this picture.
I see what you're saying.
And when I can't tell which of those alternatives it would actually be, that's when I say I've lost the understanding.
Got it. What is the glow in the seed at the front on the right edge?
I don't know. The whole central area seems to be a little bit washed out to me.
Hmm.
It looks like there's some sort of veiling glare. I do not know what's going on with that.
These are pretty plants. Gomphocarpus fructiosus. Seriously,
Easy for you to say.
it's the swan plant. It's a kind of milkweed.
Really?
Yeah,
And so do we have any idea how big these things are?
ginormous by the looks of it. I mean,
But I
like
mean, this
tree.
is the so you're looking at something that gives us a an independent view of. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about the plant, and I'm talking specifically about the seeds.
Oh yeah, no, I'm talking about the plant because they look like they've got breadfruit at the top of a tree and they're calling it the same plant. So yeah, they're gigantic.
I wonder if these are like the breadfruit
These are the seeds that come out of the
that
breadfruit.
come out of the breadfruit. Okay. So I interpret this as very likely being a synthetic stereo, based on the absence of vertical disparity, and in addition, the presence of some smearing artifacts and
Yeah,
halos in
I
the
see.
back.
Mm.
So this stuff here is a that's a flat out artifact.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what caused that. That could
Mhm.
be an issue that sometimes appears when stacks are shot with a relatively short distance between subject and lens, and is focus stacked by moving the lens. So it's a case where the perspective changes a lot from the front of the stack to the back of the stack, and that sort of perspective change cannot be completely backed out by anybody's focus stacking software. I cannot tell whether that's for sure what happened in this case, but it's a candidate.
Yeah, I see. It gets a lot more obvious. I don't know whose picture this is. You know what these plants are used for?
No idea.
To attract monarch butterflies who love them.
Really?
Yep,
Huh. I had no idea.
me neither. I didn't even know what they were or that they existed. This is from B Tom. Nice one, B Tom. Nice, interesting, well done stereo. And he says that it's the swan plant seed stereo. Swan plant seeds after the seed pod bursts open, approximately 51 images, manual rail. Oh, so he did this manually with a rail. Yeah,
Okay.
that would probably explain that shift in the back.
Well, the software can normally compensate for common types of shifts. This could have been an uncommon shift that it could not compensate for, or again, it could be a matter that the total depth of the stack was large with respect to the distance between um, the the subject and the center of perspective, the entrance pupil.
Yeah,
Um, in which case, it could be a matter that the perspective just changed too much to keep everything lined up.
got it. Okay, good job, B Tom. Next up is
Next up,
oh yes. As you're presenting this, I'm going to step out for just a second.
so
We
I will just talk to the air while you're
talk to
gone.
the air and pretend. This is T-Bex, by the way. T-Bex Weevil.
Okay, I
Oh,
assume that's the name
nice.
of a person and not the name of the weevil.
Correct.
Uh, I
It
do
may
not.
be both, but I've never heard of a T-Bex weevil. That's a beautiful weevil.
It is lovely, and the stereo is also very nice. We can zoom in a long ways and get more and more detail. I love the pads on the feet of these things.
Oh, wow. Oh, they are beautiful.
Isn't that beautiful? But now here's the thing. When I get in this far to observe these feet, I also observe that the structure of the feet seems odd. It's like this individual segment of the tarsus is has a
Mm,
couple of dents in it with a ridge in between.
yes.
It's like it's low, high. And then the one behind it has this kind of the same thing. It looks like it's medium high, low, very high, and falls off again.
Oh, is that
And
separation again?
bingo. It took me a while to figure it out. And where I first noticed it was actually here on the head and thorax, well, the snout in this particular case. So this lump and this lump and that lump I think, are not physically present on the actual Weevil. I think those are entirely induced by stereo separation.
Oh, wow.
And one of the reasons for thinking that is that if we go in, we can see, as well as the lumpiness, and now you can see clear layering.
Yeah.
There's also some duplication of the structure of the individual scales. It's like
That is
uh,
really subtle, though. I mean,
ghosting. It is very subtle. Yes,
you would not expect most people to put on a pair of glasses and look at that and have a
absolutely not.
in there.
I'm just pointing this out because you called me in as an expert in stereo to talk about this stuff.
This is true. This is absolutely true. It's still a lovely photograph, T-Beck. I love when I saw this pair, I was unimpressed by the pose. In 2D, it looked like you just dropped a weevil on a piece of brown stuff. But through the glasses, it just absolutely comes to life.
I have exactly the same experience. I am looking at this very moment with no glasses, and I get kind of an impression of, yeah, okay, it looks like a rock with a weevil dropped on top of it.
Right.
And
But
then I put the glasses on, and I see that every foot is precisely placed on
e-
the surface of
exactly.
whatever that thing is it's sitting on.
It's dancing down the face of that rock, one foot at a time. It's
Yep,
absolutely perfect.
I would consider the mounting to be flawless.
Yep.
The antennae are up and in what appears to be to me to be a natural position. I don't know this particular weevil, so I could be mistaken about that. But aside from the raised tarsal claws of this back foot, there's really nothing about this that suggests to me that it's not a live weevil.
Yep. It's a good job. Good job. I like that. That's
By the
strange.
way, I notice here when I change zoom levels that there's a certain amount of flashing that goes on. It's like you get a bunch of aliasing and then it goes away.
Yes.
That's a behavior of Stereo Photo Maker. Apparently, what it does is it quickly changes zoom so quickly that it does not have time to do the anti-aliasing, and then it patches it up with a
Oh,
properly anti-aliased view.
I see this same thing in some Adobe products too, where if the computer's very fast and opens up the image, you get that flash of graininess, sparkle almost.
Yeah. Well, of course, what happens in Zareen Stacker is I never bothered to anti-alias at all.
There you go.
So if you are zoomed into 100%, you're seeing the normal quality of the pixels. And if you're zoomed out farther than that, you pick up some extra noise. You never see flashing uh, because it never bothers to switch from the crude to the more elegant version. That is on the infamous list of things to do sometime in the future. But on the other hand, it's been on that list for 14 years. So the odds of it getting done next week are not good.
Understood. Understood. It's a work in progress. Who follows T-Beck towards the winner's circle?
We have the Sonoran Bumble Bee.
Ah, oh, how unusual is that?
Yeah. And so the Sonoran Bumble Bee is sort of a routine example of beautiful, clean, synthetic stereo that correctly shows very subtle geometric structure.
Uh-huh.
The subtle geometric structure in this case happens to be a bunch of hairs that have
Dirt.
dust and such on them. Yeah, I'm presuming this is dirt because at some portion of the thing, I think we have some pollen grains as well. Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
pollen grains, of course, are
Pollen-like.
very pollen-like, highly detailed,
Beautiful.
stuck in between the hairs. Yeah, this is just a masterful illustration of stereo making evident structure that would be impossible to see in a single view. Go ahead, take your glasses off.
They are.
And, it just looks like a mess.
It does. It's
It
this is the
it's
second.
like, "Why are you bothering to show me this? This is a waste of time." "Oh, okay. Put the glasses on, I got it."
Yeah.
"Yeah, right, this is
It's
interesting."
it's it's funny how there seems to be the ones that look very promising have not been, and the ones that really look pretty ordinary are spectacular when you actually look at them in stereo. I wonder if that's the way it always is.
I
No,
think it is, and I think the reason is that, if the ones that already look good in mono sort of, like, don't give you any place to go,
got it. Yeah,
unless the structure is very complicated to start with. But, ones that like this that well, if we go all the way out, okay, everybody can recognize this as being a bumblebee. We know what bumblebees look like. There's enough cues from shadows and shading and so forth that we can figure out what the shape of this thing is and probably be right about that. But if I only show you this much, then you have no clue in a mono view what the physical shape is. Put on the glasses, and it's immediately evident.
yeah. So it's a good technical study. Good
It
technical.
is an excellent technical study.
Let's see who did that piece of work. That was William Bodine,
Okay.
and he titled it aptly "Dirty Sonoran Bumble Bee." So I think
Okay.
we can give him a half point back for that. Bombus sonorus. Way to go.
Bombus sonorus is in the name of the file, as is Sonoran Bumblebee, but the word dirty is not.
It's in the entry title as list.
Okay.
Dirty Sonoran Bumblebee, glasses view. So
So
who's in
Mr. Bodine had written me email because he was having some technical difficulties putting some stereo stuff together, and I am delighted to see that he obviously got past whatever difficulties those were.
Well done, William. Good job.
Next up,
Ooh, I do like this. It's a clever.
you'll like it better after I switch it to parallel view.
Oh no, that's just nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's almost totally free of artifact. It has lots of ability to zoom in and see more and more interesting structure.
Yes.
Yes, this is essentially flawless from the standpoint of stereo. It's a very attractive image.
It really is.
It's it's not within the final few of the progression that we're doing, in large part because it is too successful as a mono image.
What a clever concept. I agree. It is a fantastic image just by itself.
It
So
is, and it's almost like I'd rather spend if I have to decide how to spend my screen space. This is so good as a mono that I'd almost rather just double the number of pixels in the mono image and get the more resolution, as opposed to seeing the stereo pair, which mainly serves to confirm what I can already figure out from the mono.
really, it's because it's ball shaped. I think we just have a very good intuition as to how this would look in stereo.
We do, and in my particular case, in making my notes, many places I've said I am hampered by, and in this particular case, I'm hampered by knowing too much about this particular type of wasp. So when I pop up the stereo, there's nothing that surprises me about it, but it's a beautiful image.
It's characteristic of the class of parasitic bees, small cuckoo bees, right? That this is their death posture.
Yes, or their defensive posture. You can't beat up on me when I'm like this.
Can't fly very well either.
No, it cannot fly, but that exoskeleton is remarkably difficult to get through. It's pretty tough.
Well, that's a beautiful picture. I wonder who did that. Did I say? I don't know, so I didn't. It was Angie's second shot. Angie was the flower that had the vertical separation in it.
Okay.
This is nice. She also submitted it as a triptych, by the way.
Yes.
Very nice work, Angie. I love it. Now, as I know it's you, I see your handprint all over it. It's exactly how she would photograph this thing. Beautiful colors. Excellent. So we must be close to the top
We're getting there.
7.
Let's see. I'm sure you'll edit this down as necessary.
I don't like to edit down guests. They always have something interesting to say. It looks like
Well,
Patrick
we
again.
just spend a longer YouTube. Yeah, this is the same specimen in a somewhat different pose, and
Didn't get a cleanup, did he? Between pictures.
it appears not. It appears not. So this image, just independent of the stereo, this image makes me laugh in a good way, because there's this beautiful disconnection between the lively, jaunted pose and the 2 centuries dead texture. It just every time I look at it, it's like I did not expect that. I did not expect that combination.
Yeah, but
Um,
it actually works in a strange way. The colors are, it works a lot better in stereo than it does in mono.
and we're nearing the end of the sequence where that should be true.
If you look at this thing just as it is, the bottom part of the picture looks just messy and hazy. But that all resolves into individual hairs and something that looks like an eyeball in the piece of the flower on the left.
Yes.
Very, very impressive how
Yeah, if we can zoom in on all that, and because we have the stereo separation, we can zoom in and make sense of this.
yeah,
Again, if I take the glasses away, I'm struggling to make any sort of sense about this at all. I can't. I mean, I have to consciously think about, oh, this must be in front because it's hiding something behind it, and that process is agonizingly slow, and you can only do it for one little bit of an image at a time. But
yeah, it's
put on the glasses, and the back of your head just solves the depth problem for the entire image area at the same time.
yeah, very impressive. Nice. Did you say that this was you're convinced that this was done synthetically?
I don't recall if I said that or not, but I strongly suspect it is.
Patrick is one of the people that I would fully expect to be able to do this manually as well.
Well, now that you asked the question, let me go look at this in more detail. Okay, so I'm going to retract that comment because I'm not seeing indication of shift artifact, and I am seeing differences in the color of the 2 frames. We have background differences,
Mm.
and that would be very unlikely to happen with synthetic stereo. So yes, I agree with you. Um, this looks like it was actual
He
two
doesn't.
two position work.
He doesn't say. This was this was a separate image from having a rough day. Not very different, but yeah, he doesn't mention whether or not it was done.
Yeah, I did not specifically compare this image with the other one to try to infer whether they were shot separately or whether they were just different crops of the same thing.
I think they're different. They're different photographs. So, I mean, one of them has
Oh,
the
yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you for raising the issue of synthetic versus two shot. I'm finding no evidence of synthetic.
interesting that. Well, that is consistent with this photographer. He's very his technical photography is amazing. He does a lot of astrophotography, and
Hmm.
is a stickler for detail. So I wouldn't.
Yeah, and I do notice now that I'm out here looking at the whole frame. Um, the left frame is more of a neutral slate up in this upper left corner,
Hmm.
where the right frame is a distinct bluish color,
Hmm.
and that's I can't think of any way that would happen in synthetic.
Well, interesting. That's I mean that I surmised that on the basis of knowing Patrick, not seeing it in the picture. But yeah, that makes sense. Very interesting. Uh,
Yeah. Um, one thing I did notice was perfect alignment of the two stereo images in this one. And again, you expect that from somebody of his technical quality.
nice work.
Okay, what else we got? The spider.
That looks familiar.
Mother-in-law, perhaps?
No, it looks like your photograph of a hobo.
It does remind me of that. And in fact, I made a note that I'm hampered on this one by having done spiders myself. But this is very well done. Um, I'm asking myself the question: do I think it was done as two shots, or do I think it was done synthetic? And again, I'm not seeing any evidence of synthetic, so I would probably go with two physical views. This is a lot of fun. I love the little hairs these spiders have.
This was done in Stereo Photo Maker, so it is a found spider done manually, and it is Fool on the Hill, his second image. So very good, Robert. Very good indeed. There is a lot of detail in there, isn't there?
Huge amount of detail. One of the advantages of taking the time to shoot from two different angles is you never get anything like layer separation. So you can shoot for optimum image quality and still get perfect stereo out of it. The big advantage of synthetic stereo is only its convenience, which sometimes is a matter of being able to get the stereo versus not get the stereo.
Yeah. I convenience is one of the words I wouldn't really use with Zerine.
For stereo,
Yeah, I mean,
well,
I wouldn't
uh,
think of it as well. Yeah, I suppose it is convenient.
you prepare the subject once, you light the subject once, you shoot the stack once, you render the stack once if you like the mono view, if you think there's anything in there, and then if you want a stereo pair, you go to options, preferences, stereo. You set three numbers, and you say align and stack all PMax, and you get a stereo pair, which is a huge, huge, huge time saver compared with having to line up your subject two different ways
Mhm.
and shoot two different stacks and process them, and then, heaven forbid, discover that you didn't get the number of degrees of separation that really work well. So I think of synthetic stereo as being something that comes almost for free once you've gone to the trouble of getting the stack in the first place.
Well, that is one of the ways I use it. I mean, I'll go back and stack something again because it'll occur to me that that would look good in stereo. And you can't obviously do that once you've already broken down the stack. So
Yes.
now, one thing that bothers me about that is the transparency of the left forelimb and the right
Yes.
forelimb may be even amputated. Is that real, or am I?
No, I get exactly the same effect. I think that, there was just a lot of texture in the whatever the substrate is,
Yep.
and it overrode the texture, of the leg so that we see both of them. Classic transparent foreground, and I just, had to look at that and say, "Yep, that's classic transparent foreground," and I'm just gonna accept that as a cost of doing business in this case.
Good. Good. That's a good explanation. All right. Good job,
Well,
Robert.
what do we got next? We have something which is called a 3D print of chaos.
Ah, this is Bud Parrot. I know that because the word. Oh, yes, I remember this. Oh,
It's pretty safe to say that I have never seen a structure quite like this before.
Bud is new to 3D printing like I am. And when he has a failed print, he, instead of throwing it away so nobody sees it, he photographs it. And I'm very impressed.
In my notes, it says a lovely haunting image of an organic shape that I'm pretty sure is actually a plastic extrusion.
That's it. Gosh, it
Uh,
looks like a cartoon character with a big nose flying.
sort of. Yeah,
It's,
it looks like the sort of thing that, again, a CGI artist might gen up
yes.
for some sort of a middle class movie.
Yeah. But
But this is one of those cases where even though this is a synthetic in the sense of manufactured subject, when you zoom in on it, you start seeing really interesting detail. So with the glasses on, it's perfectly clear that this is a filament which is almost totally broken.
yep.
Going into that, this is in front of some other filaments that are
No,
behind it.
no doubt. No doubt.
And, there's also, I'm zooming in farther, the whole thing has an interesting matte texture to it,
Uh-huh.
which surprises me a little bit. Um, I would be interested to know more about the physics of how this plastic behaves when it gets squirted out
Yeah.
and
I mean,
has a chance to harden.
it's
By the
liquid.
way, we can see here that the background has gone flat, so this is an indication that this is synthetic.
Uh-huh. It
As
was.
opposed to, yeah, with true stereo, 2 views, um, backgrounds will be in proper depth no matter how fuzzy they are. And
I
we can also see in some areas that there's a shift artifact. I don't remember exactly where.
It looks like there's one place where the filament is broken, and in those areas, the filament's melted into itself. It looks like brain tissue.
Are we talking about this area here?
No, down at the bottom right. Uh,
Or here?
yes, right there. It looks like the contents of the fiber are spraying out like they were under tension or pressure.
Yeah, that's one thing that surprised me a little bit about this. We've got the fairly thick constant diameter extrusion, and then in places we've got little fibers, and they seem to be somewhat correlated with places where the filament did something weird.
Yes. that this is the filament doing something weird by not adhering to the layer below it. It's coiling up. It's a thermoplastic, so it's rapidly cooling because it's not in contact with the plate. So I would expect it to crack and twist and look like this. I think is excellent. I love the use of two colors in the light.
Yes, I have the feeling that if this were lit with normal monochrome lighting, that it would just be an incredibly boring bunch of stuff, fully worthy of being tossed in the wastebasket. But with this combination of a close view and creative lighting to bring out the both the structure and the moodiness of it and just the visual interest, uh, this is beautiful.
It really
And
is.
and it's for me, it's especially beautiful because this is totally outside the envelope of anything that would occur to me to create, and I would fail if I tried.
It just occurred to me, it looks like it's made of those sausage-shaped balloons that people at the fun fair will twist into animal shapes. But it looks like a mad balloon artist came up with this. Great, great one, Bud. That's very unique. I like it.
I see in my notes that I have skipped over an image that I should have presented earlier, so I'm
Okay.
gonna drop back. So here we have a watch, and
Wow.
like all fine watches, we can zoom around in this thing and see all sorts of lovely detail. Huge amount of detail in these things.
Huge amount of surface. It's misleading. That looks like a big ridge, but it's not. It's just the brush
Talking about this structure here.
behind the copper bushing thing right there. It looks like the US is at the bottom of a hill, but it's really not.
Ah, yes, yes. It's just the way that the brushing was done.
Yeah.
By the way, since we're here, we can see there's some vertical disparity in the U.S. U.S. is low here, high over there.
Yes.
Uh, that combined with the absence of shift artifacts is a clear indication that this was a true shot stereo.
Is that blob on the side of the U? Is that real or no? Not that one. The on the other side, the other limb of the that point. Is that an artifact or is that part of the part of the lettering?
Well, I don't know for sure. It looks to me like it's part of the lettering, and it looks like it's a pair with this one on the other side.
Strange font.
It is a strange font. I agree. But this looks like I could easily convince myself that this left side and the right side, that those sort of V-shaped areas sticking out are structurally the same, but this one is reflecting the light and this other one is not.
Yeah, I'd buy that. I'd buy that. Maybe it's just the ink that was filled into that because these would have been made by hand. This numbering engraved, in other words.
Really? Not by machine?
I wouldn't think so.
Well, it's spectacularly well done if so.
Now, why would a picture this detailed and successful not win a competition like this? What is losing it points?
It's because when I take the glasses away, I don't have a sense of loss.
Was
I
that
certainly understand a little more about the structure in the stereo view than I do in the mono. But the mono is so successful, and the structure of a watch is so well known that I just get it as I'm looking at a watch. And yep, if I get the stereo, I can definitely get a more sense of presence but not particularly more sense of understanding.
There's one exception to that rule. It's that toothed-looking hand on that as it drapes over that piece of copper. I don't see that in 2D anything like as clearly as I see it as the shape of the end of that arm. For some reason I don't see that in 2. Well, I guess I do now. Oh, that's a dial there.
Well, that particular control is positioned along a curved screw thread by a couple of movable nuts.
Yeah, it says adjustable or adjustment
Oh, it does, yes.
or a
I totally missed the text. Adjusted.
adjusted. That is impressive. I like this picture.
It's a very nice picture. But again, even here, uh, when I put the glasses on and take the glasses off, it's a subtle effect. Um, and actually, what the glasses mainly give me is an improved sense of the depth in the gearing behind that adjustment mechanism that we were talking about.
Yeah, I agree. It does make the copper thing at the bottom look a bit more sausage shaped. Though,
As it should, but that's a subtle effect for me.
yeah, it is pretty subtle. But of course, you can't unsee it. Once you've put the glasses on and looked at it, you can't unsee what you just saw. So it's going to change the way you perceive it the next time.
That is true. What saved me in this particular case was that back here, when you were describing what you were looking at and I was trying to point to it, I was not wearing my glasses.
Ah,
So I was seeing it in mono.
yeah.
And the question then was, when I put on the glasses, how much more do I see? And the answer was not much.
Okay. That's a good answer to the question then.
So now resuming the main sequence.
Okay. Oh, this is the video.
Yes. And this one has sound.
Not getting the sound. That is fantastic.
Just as well. It's kind of loud and on my end.
That is a pristine bee. You never guess who made
One
that.
of one of the very few cases where I actually know who made it. Let me just play that again so that people can see it. And I'll talk about how it appears to have been made and what some of the issues with that are.
Okay. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of the same type of problems that I've encountered with photogrammetry at this scale. It's nice. It's a nice clip.
Yeah, so I lost most of what you were saying because the music on my end is so loud. Um, but there were a few things that I noticed while this was going on that took me a while to figure out. First off, um, of course, I had to ask myself, how was this thing made? It was obviously a physical rotation of some sort, but in more detail, what was going on? So I pulled the movie into Photoshop and I looked through frame by frame, and as best I can tell, this bee was physically rotated about 1 degree per frame, and then the stereo was assembled by taking uh, image number n and pairing that with image number
And
n plus six,
oh,
6 frames farther along.
oh,
So about a six degrees separation between the left eye and the right eye view. And this is a case of getting something sort of for free. Once you've gone to the trouble of making the subject physically rotating to get the movie, well, then you can add the stereo almost for free by just pairing up the frames properly. You don't have to do any extra shooting. You just have to do some extra processing.
that's clever.
It is very clever, and it works perfectly during the rotation part. of everything.
Because our brain is able to fill in the missing data and smooth it as a 3D object rotating in
Yeah,
space.
we do lots of smoothing. I mean, we smooth out the fact that it's discrete 1 degree increments of rotation to make it appear continuous. But now things are getting a little weird in this region. Um, if you think about this, we're in a zoom sequence. So, and let me just play that again. So we're going in closer and closer.
Right.
Okay. So we're in a zoom sequence. Because we're in a zoom sequence, and because we're selecting every 6 frame separation to make our stereo, it means that our left image and our right image have different scales.
Yes.
So there are inevitably vertical disparities between the left image and the right image. You can see that clearly in this case by looking, for example, at where this vein ends on the wing, seeing
Uh-huh.
how far away from the top of the frame it is here, and it's much closer over
Hmm.
here. Um, if this were a single static image, then I would be bothered by that separation, by that discrepancy between the two images. In fact, as we sit here, I've got my glasses on, and it's immediately apparent that there's something weird going on there at the top of the frame.
Yeah, it's jumping
And if I
around.
think about it, I can identify, oh yeah, it's the vertical disparity. But in context, when it's moving, all that stuff gets smoothed out.
It does. Even the wings are coming in and out of existence there at the beginning of the turn, but
Yeah, in fact, there's an interesting thing. It looks like one of the wings twitches a little bit
yes,
near the beginning.
right there. I don't think it actually is. I think it's just catching the light. It appears to disappear because it's kind of fits right onto the pattern of the hind wing.
That could be. I did not attempt to go through frame by frame in that area to understand what was going on.
Right there.
Right there, I pick it up visually as
A
a
twist.
flick of the wing.
Yeah, I
But
see
you're
that.
right, it's probably just a flick of the reflections.
Well, he went to a lot of, or she went to well, we know it's Leroy, don't we? Went to a lot of trouble to clean that bee. That is one clean bee.
A very clean bee. And then a lot of trouble to shoot uh well, I don't know how many frames this is. Several hundred different viewing positions, complete with a zoom sequence in the middle,
Mhm.
which was I I'm guessing it was probably shot that way, although it could have been done in post processing. Um, really don't know. Anyway, a lot of work went into the generation of this. That trick of generating the stereo by doing, every pairing every so many frames, even though there's going to be discrepancies, and having it work is a surprise to me. And this is one of the things that it would not have occurred to me to do. If it had occurred to me to do, I probably would have dismissed it as, well, that's not going to work. But in fact, it works very well, even for me, and I'm a persnickety SOB. So yeah, this is this is both fun and educational for me.
You would still call this in the intent of the competition a photograph or a group of photographs. I mean, it's
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in the intent of the competition, it is definitely stereo. It happens to be a video. And so one of the questions I have to ask is, what does the video add that I
mm,
can't see in an individual frame moving? And so one of the things that I did with this was to just get a piece of cardboard and block off one of the images. So I wasn't getting stereo,
mhm.
just looking at the mono. And the effect of that is not a great sense of loss. The motion itself is very effective at conveying the shape of the subject.
It
Let me
is.
just play that again.
Yeah, it doesn't add a lot. Agreed.
Yeah, so this is one of those cases where I would have to carefully consider the trade-offs between doing a stereo presentation like this and sacrificing half of my screen resolution versus just blowing the thing up to full screen and letting it do the sort of moving sequence like we would see on TV.
Hmm.
Uh, that's
It,
not to imply that I know the answer to that. It's just something that would have to be considered. For me, the stereo in this case does not add much to the motion sequence, even though if it's not moving, the stereo does add quite a bit to the static presentation.
no doubt, no doubt. Though I'm a little bothered by the face on the right side below the eye. It is awfully dark. It's hard to make out any detail.
Yes, I completely agree.
Uh, it-
And I'm also, of course, I desperately want to zoom in and look at that, but I can't because I don't have any tools that will let me zoom into stereo movies.
nice, Leroy. Good work.
So what else do we have? We actually have another one very much in the same vein
Ah,
and almost the same technique. This one appears to have been about 1 degree per uh, per stack with a separation of 8 within the sequence, so about 8 degrees.
boy, there's a lot
Uh,
of hair detail on that.
there is a lot of detail, and this is a case where if it's not moving, then the stereo lets me see the structure a lot better, even though, of course, this is a fly, I already know what the structure looks like, but I can perceive it a lot better with the stereo than I can in a static image. Once I click the play button, then the stereo continues to be a nice stereo when it starts moving, but the moving image, not viewed in stereo, becomes a lot more clear for what the structure is.
Yeah, it doesn't add much, in other words.
Exactly. The stereo is not adding much here.
Yeah, it is the motion, isn't it? I mean, we interpret a rotating subject as having depth. I mean, that's kind of what we smooth it into, isn't it?
We do, yes. And I'm not sure if it is really known yet where in the brain those two interpretations happen. Uh, stereo is well understood. That's basically done with some correlators along horizontal lines back in the visual cortex. Where depth from motion parallax gets inferred, I don't know if that's well understood yet. It could be using some of the same mechanisms, or it could be something totally different. Unfortunately, we are not consciously privy to the operations of our own heads.
No. Speak for yourself, but no.
I'm pretty sure I would be appalled if I were.
I think this must be the same person because this fly is also almost perfect in its preparation. It's been around a while, though. It's been dead for a while.
Yeah, it's clear from the proboscis of this thing that it's desiccated.
It's Leroy Harding. Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so
Fly
no
head,
surprise.
about 6,520 photographs taken at 163 different angles, 40 per stack.
Okay,
So 40 times 163. That's a lot.
yeah, it is a bunch.
Yep. I have done that same foolishness of made pictures that big, and they're hardly ever worth it. This is definitely worth it. Nice job. It's mummified though. I guess you couldn't get a fly to stay still for 6,250 photographs were it anything but mummified.
Let me let me play this again. It may not be as mummified as you think.
I'm
Pay
looking.
attention. Pay attention to the backward to the farther back palp.
Okay. I am looking at the way its shoulder is separating into two pieces, though.
Did you see it pop up there?
I did. I did. It's I wrote that off as being angle of the camera changing when I first saw it, but it does appear to pop up. Yep.
Yeah, I get it as actual moving. The first time I saw it was only at the very end of the video, and I thought because it was at the very end of the video that it had been thrown in as sort of a little bit of a trailer. This is what could go wrong. And then I replayed the video, and the same thing happens right here at the beginning, right
Yeah,
there.
right there. But that could be any number of things. Remember, this is in between stacks, so that fly has moved or the camera has moved.
Yeah, well, the bulk of the fly's head does not change. It's not like the fly suddenly nods its whole head. The fly's head stays in one place and only that pelt moves
Right.
right there.
It's small enough and delicate enough, and if it's desiccated, a breeze could do that.
Yeah, we don't know the cause. All we know is something did it.
Yeah, it's successful. It's a lot of work. Well done, Leroy. Gosh, that is a lot of work.
So then, moving on.
Have a guess what number you're on. Oh, I like this one. I had the hardest time. I thought this was a chocolate cake, one of those volcano cakes.
We're on number 4.
Number 4.
Number 4.
So that makes this yeah.
So this score is very high uh, because of all of the things we've talked about.
Yep.
Without the glasses, I have a pretty good idea, I think, of what this thing is structured like, but I have to think about it. And when I put on the glasses, I immediately see it and I observe that my inferences were not quite correct.
Yep. Mine weren't either. Those spherical beads of metal or whatever they are on the spark surface, I did not see those coming.
Isn't that interesting detail?
That is fantastic.
And these fibers, I assume the fibers were something that got added later after the spark plug was taken out of service. It's hard to imagine those things surviving
Yeah, that's what you
combustion
see there.
chambers.
Are those colors real, Rick? Are
Yeah,
they?
I assume those are oxidation colors.
Oh, wow.
There's no way I can know for sure, but they sure look like the same colors I've seen a lot of my own stuff that has gotten hot.
That is really otherworldly looking. I did not look at this close up, but that is beautiful. Wow. It's a little out of focus. There's a little motion blur in there, and
Well,
none of it hurts.
we're zoomed into 176%
Oh,
at this
oh,
point. So yeah, we're
count. And okay.
no surprise that we're seeing some fuzz. Yeah, so here's some structure that I think is artificial. This looks like a depth mapper amp as opposed to a real physical structure. I suspect there's a fiber that comes out here.
Now, how is it where it passes over that sphere? How does it make that sphere look concave?
Right here.
Yeah.
Well, I can think of two possibilities. Possibility number one is it's a shadowing effect of some sort. Possibility number two is it's really concave.
There you go. The only one though. No, there's one at the top that is as well. Oh,
Can't tell. It's a good
can't.
question. It certainly, you know,
I know.
I don't have enough stereo to be sure about it. Um, but from doing the shape from reflections and shading thing, I can't figure out how that could be anything except depression.
Well, I have no prior knowledge of what happens at the contact point in a spark plug. that could cause this, but it is intriguing. I mean, this will. And what is the granular surface of that copper appearing plate at the top? Is that the other electrode?
It is the other electrode. As for what that granular appearance actually is, I don't have a clue.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to research that because that's amazing. I saw none of that coming from the picture.
Yep. Now, some of that we could maybe get by just zooming in on a single view. I mean, if I take my glasses off and I hold up a hand so I can only see one of the pair, and I zoom in, uh, nope, I'm not seeing the
Don't
structure.
see it. You see a couple of big balls on it, but I don't see any of the super fine detail. That,
Yeah, I've got without the stereo, I have no understanding of structure at this point.
yeah,
Just zero. But gosh, I've just put my glasses back on, and it feels so good when it stops hurting.
yeah,
I can see depth again.
yeah. And even that fuzzy a bit of artifact or fuzz hair doesn't look abnormal in stereo. It just looks like a piece of cotton got caught on the end of it while it was being cleaned.
Yeah, which is probably exactly what happened. So this is very, very successful. You know, maybe a little bit of depth map ramping, but I don't see any layer separation in this, which would be I would expect obvious on these smoothly curved surfaces.
Well, let me see
So
whose entry it was because this is a definite honorable mention. Faux show. That was T-Beck. So that is impressive. T-Beck was also
it
our
was the Weevil, right?
yep. So
Okay.
that's two fantastic pictures, T-Beck. Well done. This one I love. It makes me want to photograph a spark plug, but I don't think I have one. I might take one out of my neighbor's lawnmower. They use spark plugs, right? Yeah.
It depends. Some of the new ones use batteries, but we hope that they don't exhibit any of this sparking appearance.
No. Is this abnormal, do you suppose? Or is this
The
normal?
appearance of this one,
Yeah.
I have not looked at a lot of spark plugs, but the few that I have looked at are consistent with this.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I always just assumed they would just be colored metal, not fur balls, but there you go. I'll look it up. Very strange consistency to the metal of the electrode on the top. It looks almost like it has fur. Is that just oxidation, do you think?
We're talking about this stuff around here, the
Yep.
main
Up
part of the
on top.
bulk. Yeah, I would think that would just be oxidation.
It's oddly not symmetrical, aligned. I don't, yeah. And
Yeah,
the bottom part is ceramic, so that would look completely different. Okay, interesting. Very good.
right, right.
We should be down to numero trace.
Number 3, I believe, on the stereo's greatest hits.
That would be the bronze medal winner. Is this lichen or
I think it's mostly moss. This stuff down here in the middle strikes me as being lichen, and all of this green stuff up above it strikes me as being moss
mhm.
with sporangia. Which, by the way, when we zoom in,
Oh, wow, they're cool. Oh,
yeah, are they not cool?
they look at the little pot tops on them.
Yeah, yes, little pop tops indeed.
Who would have guessed? I didn't know those things were full of avocado stuff.
Apparently, avocado dip. Yeah, something like that,
You
or maybe a
know,
bunch of green-colored spores.
I found a bunch of these things a couple of years ago and photographed them. They were in rows and they turned out to be the egg cases of stink bugs. But these are different. They
Yeah,
look almost identical though. The pale empty one at the bottom left does anyway. Fantastic.
and in this case, if I take my glasses away I get such a sense of loss
Yeah,
that I just want to put the glasses right back on.
yeah, I agree. The greenery around the sporangia just becomes background without the glasses, but
Yes,
it becomes very much part of the action. Gosh, it's like there's a whole universe of busyness going on there.
I can spend many happy minutes zoomed in looking around this sort of imagery.
Yeah, this is very successful. I love the colors too. They're very natural looking. It would have been tempting to goose this a bit on the
On
on
saturation.
saturation, or probably not saturation, but probably on the vibrance.
Uh-huh.
It would have been temptation, but that hasn't been done here. These look very natural.
They do. They do. So here's a question for you. What do you think this white stuff is? My wife is totally convinced that it's snow. I just don't know.
No, I don't think it's snow. Oh, it could be now. Look at the yellow parts. It's kind of piled up on there.
Yeah, just a little bit. I just don't know. It seems like it's either that or some fungal thing.
Well, you would expect the snow to be also on top of the flat parts of the pots as well. And
Yep.
it, um,
And
let
yet, then we get down in here.
ain't no snow down there.
Oh, well, there's a bunch of white stuff lying on top of things.
Yeah, you're right.
So
There
I
is.
just don't know. I just don't know.
I think that I need to ask the person who took this picture if that's snow.
There you go.
And I think for some reason that this was Larry. Yeah, it was Larry. The lichen and moss on tree bark. Well done, Larry. That's two very interesting photographs. Those just look amazing. That looks like an insect Christmas tree with those little things sprouting out of it. Very
Hmm.
nice.
Yeah, one thing that is a little bit of a problem with this image is this thing in the middle, which looks like some sort of a bizarre depth map artifact. Um, I don't know. I see indications all through here that the stereo was done with a DMAP or its equivalent in some other tool, and this sort of swirly banding looks like what I see sometimes with DMAPs that have a problem tracking the physical surface.
But but why just there? Why would
Yeah, good question. I don't know.
it
My
looks
my
like
best my
sorry.
best guess would be that there's something like a blob of water there in
Uh,
the original, and it's the combination of the actual appearance and is driving the algorithm nuts.
it looks like the same structure as the thing at 1 o'clock above it. Um, an empty, yeah, that one. And it looks like it's just at an angle and possibly has moved during the photograph. Or, but yeah, water drop sounds even better.
A case where going back to the original imagery would probably yield some insight about that.
Hmm. If it changed during the sequence.
Or if in an individual frame without any of the complexity added from the stacking, maybe it would be clear that, oh yeah, that's a water drop.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, marvelous structure in this thing. Have it described in my notes as a bit of a sleeper because when you see just one of the images as mono covering the full frame, you sort of wonder just how interesting is this thing going to be anyway.
That's
And
what
then
when I looked at it.
and then you see it in stereo, and you have an opportunity to zoom in, and those questions go away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no doubt. No doubt. That seems to be a recurring theme. That
Yep, it is a recurring theme, and it's one that has recurred to me for about the last 30 years. So the next one up, number 2 on our list,
silver
i-
medalist.
is another one of these sleepers.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Oh. Now
You
this.
look at this. You look at this. Well, first off, I displayed this on one of my paper matched monitors, and it's very dark on that monitor. But um, but when brightened up, or when looked at as I am now on my much brighter laptop at the default settings,
Um,
apparently for some gamer, it looks much brighter. Nonetheless, it's boring, it's uninteresting, it's confusing. It's like, why are you showing to me this? The thumbnail would get it rejected from any competition immediately.
then you put the glasses on.
And then you put the glasses on.
Boy,
Oh, look at that. It's a blue flower with petals and stamens and oh wow, look at how all this stuff is put together.
it is amazing. I was not expecting this. I saw this and I thought, well, I don't know how much better that could look just by being. It's completely different. Wow, you feel like you're moving right through those.
Yes, an enormous sense of presence,
Yeah,
really, really good separation. Uh,
I
the
think that.
usual collection of artifacts, but none of them that make me think I'm being confused about the structure.
I think the low light actually helps with the moodiness of this, the kind of labyrinthine,
I agree.
cryptic feel.
I agree. Once you get past the point of being able to actually see what's in here
Uh huh. Wow.
and make sense of it, which I cannot do effectively from a mono view. I take away the glasses and I want to move on to the next image. I put the glasses back on. Nope, nope, not time to move on yet. I want to look around some more in this one.
Yeah, it's very clever, and I like the way he's subtly lit it, so you're getting the light right where you need it to show the three dimensionality of the stamens or anthers, whatever they are. The the catching the light just at the tips
Yeah,
very makes them stick out in your face. Nice job, B Tom. It's
I'm
a
quiet because I'm having so much fun looking at this image right now.
It's a wild cornflower, 1.2 times magnification, 68 images, manual rail, a Nikon 50mm 1.8 frontwards. How interesting. That's a very basic, well shot stack.
It is.
Well, I would not have guessed from the non stereo images that that was going to be at the top of the stack, but I certainly see it now.
Likewise. I showed this one to my wife. She had the same experience that you and I are having. When I set the screen, the picture in front of her initially with no glasses, I could sort of watch her face, and it's like, okay, why are you bothering to show me this? And I handed her the glasses and said, "And here is your transporter." And she put them up and she looked at the picture. She said, "I see what you mean. I'm now in a different place."
Yep. That's very much describes the experience. And what can possibly have out stereoed this? I don't know because I've thought I've seen every entry. What?
Ah, but you have not quite. I have one more for you.
All right. Oh,
Poppy seeds.
I remember this. I remember.
Now, now the very cool thing about this is it's a nice image in mono.
Yes, it
It's
is.
fun to look at. It has interesting shapes, it has interesting colors, it has interesting textures. You think
Can't be much more.
can't be much more. And then you put on the glasses,
Yeah.
and the 3D structure jumps out at you, and you suddenly realize you were missing so much
Yeah.
in the mono.
The cashew shapes of these things that are on end,
Yep,
totally lost in mono.
exactly. I take away the glasses, and I lose it again. I can see, yes, okay, there's one on its side here that has a curved shape of some sort, but how that fits together with
Uh,
all of these other shapes I see, I cannot tell.
yeah.
And I put the glasses on, and boom, now I understand.
You know what makes this even better for me is the fact that the author of this points out that this is actually still on the bagel, that the substrate there is bagel.
The bagel! I was wondering what the substrate was.
It's an actual bagel. Poppy seeds on a breakfast roll.
This is another one of these cases where I put the image in front of my wife, and she looked at it and said, "I've never seen poppy seeds look like that before. This is really very interesting." And then I gave her the transporter glasses, and she too had the experience. Whoa! So that's what they're shaped like.
That's amazing. This was shot with an EL Nikkor 50, by the way, f2.8N.
Okay. And I'm going to strongly guess that it's an analog two viewpoint stereo as opposed to synthetic stereo.
Two separate stacks of 35 shots,
Yep.
combined with Stereo Photo Maker.
Yep. The reason in this case for that inference is threefold. One is an absence of any shift artifacts. Second is that I can see some details of the reflections that are obvious in one side and totally not present in the other. And there is a section at upper left, which is clearly out of focus background, but retains variable depth in that region.
It does. This makes me want to actually do some standard stereo
Some
work.
true stereo, yes. Some
This has a painterly quality to the photograph that is quite unique.
yes.
And of course, the colors are perfect for this. Beautiful. Good.
So here we have a stereo pair that looks good in mono. It looks good as a thumbnail. It has all of the standard fine arts characteristics, colors, textures, contrasts, and in addition, when you put on the stereo glasses and fuse it up,
It
boom, a whole bunch more information flows into your eyes and overwhelms you. It's
is
got everything.
that is a winning photograph right there. Well done, Gerald. I don't think we've met, have we? Gerald H. That is the new name to me. Well, Gerald, congratulations. You have won. What has he won, sir?
I believe that you and I decided the prize would be a full license for Zareen Stacker. And if you already have a license, you can buy one for somebody else. If neither of those applies, please contact us and we will figure out something appropriate.
You also are getting a pair of these only with the ear things still attached. Your stereo viewers. You have a new pair. That's your second prize. And this was made in Stereo Photo Maker, so he might not have Zareen yet.
Oh, it could be. But, anytime you shoot two view stereo, you really need to run the images through Stereo Photo Maker to fix up the geometry. It's almost impossible to get the geometry perfect uh, straight out of camera. In
Okay.
fact, it's so almost impossible I wouldn't even attempt it.
What does it exactly do? What does the program?
Stereo Photo Maker looks at the content of both images. It identifies matching feature points
Oh,
as if it were going to do, say, a stitched panorama. So it identifies, okay, this little fleck at this place corresponds with this little fleck in this other image. And it does that for several hundred points. And then it goes through and it figures out what combination of shift, rotate, scale, and keystoning it needs to do to both images in order to make them match up perfectly so there are no vertical disparities. Geometrically correct stereo has only horizontal disparities. And it's a very interesting feature of the mathematics that it's even possible to do what Stereo Photomaker does. But lo and behold, it turns out it is possible to make everything match up by adjusting a relatively few parameters if you can properly identify correct matching points, corresponding points, and if you don't have too much lens distortion to deal with. If you have barrel or pincushion distortion in your lenses, then you have to back that out first. I don't know whether Stereo Photomaker does that. I suspect it does.
Would an alternative be to watch my video and just make a telecentric lens and be done with it?
Well, that would actually help quite a bit in some respects. But it would still leave you with the potential of some rotations or little vertical offsets that you wouldn't perhaps even notice.
Yeah.
That Stereo Photomaker would find and fix for you.
But Stereo Photomaker doesn't do the stacking for you.
Not at all. It only does the matching and correcting of image pairs that are presented to it.
Well, I think it did a spectacular job with those poppy seeds. That was a most entertaining set of photographs, I must say. And I learned a lot from watching them. You described them.
I don't know if you've noticed the clock. Look at the time of day.
Now, I never noticed the clock. Oh, my clock is broken. It says it's 11 o'clock.
Yeah, we've been at this for like 2 hours and 48 minutes.
Okay, that's going to be some editing. But that's okay. There's nothing but solid gold in there. I might not edit it because people are going to want to hear this. This is everything about stereo. I'll decide. That can be my job tonight.
There you go. You figure it out and do whatever seems to you like the right thing.
I will. But thank you for doing this, and thank you for giving us the prize for Gerald. And Gerald, get in touch with me so I can get your prizes to you. And everybody else, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it through 3 hours, you get an honorary pin of some kind that I'll design. Rick, thank you so much.
Thank you, Alan. This was great fun. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you.